When it comes to the start of a Big Brother season, the talk always ends up surrounding one thing in particular: the first HOH. Do you win it? Do you throw it? The answer changes depending on your playstyle, as we've seen successes and failures in both regards. We've had many players win the first HOH and go on to win the game, but we've also had almost as many players get evicted immediately after their Week 1 HOH reign. But we're not talking about the first HOH today. Instead, we're talking about the dreaded successor. The second HOH is dreaded because it doesn't matter what type of game you play. It doesn't matter if you're a dominant player or an under-the-radar spy or just a GOAT. If you win the second HOH, you lose the game. At least, that's what we've seen so far.
Marcellus, you are now evicted from the Big Brother house.
Now, what on earth am I basing this claim off of? What makes the second HOH so bad to win? Well, to start off, let's go over some points that I've come up with. As the second HOH, you don't get nearly as much of a benefit in forming house structures and becoming the crux of the alliances as you do with the Week 1 HOH. Typically, especially in modern Big Brother, we see dominant and/or long-lasting alliances formed almost instantly that revolve around the first HOH. Level 6, the committee, and grateful. But yes, just in the last few seasons, the house dynamic formed around the first head of household, which is a huge benefit for them. But winning the second HOH does not really grant you that same privilege. So you may be thinking, who cares if you don't get all the Week 1 HOH benefits? You still get the power, and it'll be like winning any other HOH. And while that can be true, there are still a lot of drawbacks. Inside the house, you become much more in the spotlight than the Week 1 HOH did, as it's more recent and in everyone's mind. Going into Week 2, it's always seen as a big and somewhat scary or daunting move to go after the Week 1 HOH, but going into Week 3, it's definitely not seen as scary to target the Week 2 HOH. They don't share that same sense of shield that the Week 1 HOH can sometimes get. Plus, there is a lot on the line in terms of playing your HOH well. People like to play it slow and safe in the beginning of the game for fear of being out of the house pre-jury. So if you mess up even just a little bit as the second HOH, you can be considered the consensus safe move in Week 3 to get rid of. And unless a large majority of the house is willing to go against the grain, you could be fresh out of luck. If you're wanting to make a big move in the early game and win the Week 2 HOH, it can be a death sentence. Playing hard early on can come across as playing dictator if you don't do so super carefully. Two prime examples of this are Cappy in Big Brother 6 and Devin in Big Brother 16. Both of these players won the second HOH, and they weren't planning on laying low and having an easy week. Cappy got into a gigantic public fight with house guest Michael, and Cappy made it his mission to rid Michael from the house. Devin got into it with his alliance member Zach because Zach wanted to keep around Devin's initial target, and at a very vocal and loud veto ceremony, Devin said screw it, he used the veto on his initial target, and then named Zach the replacement nominee.
I'm not, but what I'm telling you is what it's about to go down. If I were you, I would stay clear.
Listen to me.
I'm telling you right now.
I'm sitting down.
You got a problem?
Yeah, I got a bro. What you gonna do about it, midget?
Not a thing, but what?
Family. Let's talk about your family. Come on, midget.
You're going home.
He's going home. He's going home.
Everyone calm down. Everyone.
Both Cappy and Devin made big moves, and what's crazy is that sometimes, even when making these big moves, it doesn't matter if they succeed or not. Cappy successfully evicted Michael at the end of the week. Devin was not successfully able to evict Zach at the end of the week, but it didn't matter because both of them ended up being backdoor targets and were evicted immediately after their HOH reigns in Week 3. Those are just two examples though, and if you're not convinced yet, I'll keep bringing the receipts. Ronnie was caught playing all sides in Big Brother 11 while he was HOH and got into a fight with the entire house, and while he lucked out and survived the following week, he was still evicted pre-jury. In Big Brother 20, Caitlyn made a huge move and turned on her alliance by backdooring Swaggy C in Week 2, losing all trust from her allies and resulting in her being the only pretty much unanimous eviction in the entire pre-jury of Big Brother 20.
Do you want Swaggy out?
Yeah. I feel like that would be really like a cool thing for my game.
That'd be the coolest thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's not just the big move makers that find themselves in trouble though either. You can play your week totally safe and still end up as an early target, because one other thing I haven't mentioned yet is that in the beginning of the game, almost nobody has won a competition yet, so winning anything when you don't explicitly need to can put a target on your back as a competitor. In Big Brother 10, Jesse won the Week 2 HOH and played it basically as safe as he could, nominating the two people most on the outs inside of the house, not ruffling any feathers, and successfully getting his target out without angering anybody. But But that didn't stop the house from nominating him every week thereafter until he was evicted in week 4. In Big Brother 7, Kaser played it safe, making a deal with Chilltown and nominating 2 of the floaters inside the house, but as soon as his side wasn't in power, he was immediately evicted. Now, there are definitely other factors in play that got these players evicted other than just being the week 2 HOH, but it's not a stretch to say that them winning HOH early in the season and being in the spotlight played a factor in their early demise.
Hey, Joy.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
This is not your gift, by the way.
I know.
Have a seat, please.
It's a great gift.
Now, after talking about all these bad examples, I need to hit you with a curveball. Winning the second HOH can actually be great for your game, but it's all dependent on your position inside the house. In my mind, there are at least 2 viable justifications that make winning the second HOH good for you. One of them is extremely boring, and the other is actually quite entertaining. The first one is if you are a part of that initial week 1 alliance that formed around the first HOH. Look at players like Jordan in Big Brother 13, Jack in Big Brother 21, and Memphis in Big Brother 22. They became close allies with the first HOH in the first week and were a part of the majority alliance that formed with the HOH. So by winning the second HOH, you achieve a couple things. A, you can prove to your alliance that you are a solid choice as you just went out and won a comp to keep them all safe. B, you gain a closer bond to that first HOH as you two are, as of now, the only people to know what it's like to have that power, which can improve your game relationship with them. And C, it puts you and your alliance in a dominant position to potentially decimate the opposition and put your alliance in the driver's seat for a steamroll as you are now up 2-0 against them. As long as you can keep your alliance happy throughout the week, you should be able to put yourself in a really solid game position moving forward. But it's extremely boring for us viewers to watch. The more fun, and in my opinion, the better reason to win the week 2 HOH is if you were in direct danger that first week but managed to survive. Rachel in Big Brother 12, Frank in Big Brother 14, Paulie in Big Brother 18, Kyland in Big Brother 23, and even Paul in Big Brother 19 were all nominated to an extent in week 1 and had the possibility of going home. However, these players survived, and by winning the Week 2 HOH, they were able to take a stand and make a real effort to reform the still fluid structure of the house to save their position and get back at those that opposed them. Frank, Kyland, and Paul were all able to get the Week 1 HOH that targeted them evicted, and Paul and Kyland then became headpieces in the house structure from there on out. Paulie was able to evict someone who voted against him the first week, and then Paulie ran the entire house for the next month or so. Frank and Rachel were never able to get rid of that target on their back. However, they very easily could have been evicted in week 2 had they not won HOH, and they still managed to fire some lethal shots inside the house. And the fight that they both showed allowed them to not only survive a little bit longer, but it also got them both invites back for a future season.
You gonna chop my head off too next week, Willie?
I wasn't gonna chop your head off next week. This is getting bull right here.
But you-
I hope you go home this week.
Okay.
I hope out here.
Eat your Fruit Loops. I ain't worried about it.
Congratulations, Frank. You are the new head of household.
However, for whatever reason, it's never actually mattered how you played your Week 2 HOH. It doesn't matter if you exploded onto the scene and had everyone against you, or if you played it safe and quiet and got on an outsider, or even if you managed to take control of the entire house after your Week 2 HOH, because for unknown reasons, no second HOH has ever gone on to win the game. The closest any house guests were to winning the game were Jordan in Big Brother 13, Kyland in Big Brother 23, and Paul in Big Brother 19. Both Jordan and Kyland were evicted at the Final Four, but Kyland likely doesn't win if he makes it to the end because he'd be sitting next to Xavier. And Jordan, well, Jordan actually could have won, but that's a video for another day. The actual closest player to winning has got to be Paul, who dominated the entire game from week 2 onwards and came just 1 vote away from winning. But Paul is a bit of an odd example because they were the only veteran on Big Brother 19 and already had a huge advantage by being safe for practically the entire pre-jury. And while there's no denying that they gained their power position while being the HOH in week 2, there's no doubt in my mind that Paul would have been able to do that anyways without being the HOH.
Yes! Yes, baby! What's up? What's up, baby? What's up, baby? What's up, baby? What's up? What's up?
But revenge is gonna be even sweeter.
Overall, out of the 22 Week 2 HOHs, 6 of them were evicted in the pre-jury stage, with 2 of them being evicted immediately after they were HOH in Week 3. 13 of them were able to make it to the jury stage, but were evicted before the endgame came around, and only 3 players, Kyland, Jordan, and Paul, were able to make it to that endgame, with all 3 of them failing to snatch the crown. But there's one more part to this curse that I haven't touched upon yet. Something that makes me believe that the curse is real. For whatever reason, many of those that won the second head of household had a real Big Brother curse bestowed upon them that made them some of the most hated or unlucky house guests to ever play Big Brother. Kaser has yet to make it to the jury stage after 4 tries. Jesse was voted out by America on 2 separate occasions. Krista was engaged to Mike Boogie. Marcellus was the unfortunate fool who reaped the misfortune of being blindsided after winning the first Golden Power of Veto. Caitlyn failed to win an unlosable competition, and her boyfriend of 7 years broke up with her while she was in the house. Ronnie was tormented by the others in the house for the rest of his Big Brother life. Kyland, well, you all know what happened with Kyland's eviction. And then we get to the ones that followed them outside of the Big Brother house. Paulie was hated by America and was cursed to always fall just short in any competitive reality show that he competed in. Cappy was hated by America. Memphis was hated by the fans. Erin lost her job and became the most hated house guest of all time. Jack didn't lose his job, but also managed to become the most hated house guest of all time. And Paul. Oh, Paul. Paul had the worst misfortune of them all. Paul not only lost Big Brother for the 2nd season in a row, but by 1 vote both times, and to Josh of all people. That's as unlucky as it gets. Now, of course, I'm only joking about some of those things that I just went over. Erin and Jack didn't get some curse bestowed upon them in the house that made them hated by America. They were just terrible people inside the house, and that's why everyone hated them.
Let me just read back a few of the things you said. Referring to Candace, referring to Helen, and referring to Andy.
I do not remember saying those things, and those things were not meant to be. That was...
So, is there really a curse or something that makes it impossible to win the game if you win the Week 2 HOH? Of course not. When looking at the players who have won the second HOH, there are tons of heavy hitters, and many could have won the game if one late game change happened. So it really is just a coincidence that it hasn't worked out yet. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're wanting to lay low and not be a figurehead inside of the house, winning the Week 2 HOH is definitely not the way to go about it, as basically every single person that has won the Week 2 HOH has been a spotlight figure throughout the season. I think that winning a pre-jury HOH can actually be really good for your game, but I think either the Week 3 or Week 5 HOHs are much better. Unless you know you're a potential target or are a surviving nominee from Week 1, I would much rather wait and go for the next HOH. As much as I talk about Big Brother, I really am no expert, but to me, the Week 2 HOH is just such a first HOH junior with not nearly as many benefits. While there certainly can be good reasons to gun for the Week 2 HOH, like if you were nominated in Week 1 or you were very closely aligned with the Week 1 HOH, it's always going to be a risk to put yourself out there so early in the game. Unless you are a really good Big Brother player, you lose the ability to play under the radar, and whether you like it or not, you will become a spotlight figure in the future weeks, which are some of the most tumultuous in the entire season because everybody is still looking for any justifiable reason to nominate someone, and no one wants to go home pre-jury. All that's left to say is, no matter what it does for the player that wins the Week 2 HOH, this second HOH is oftentimes season-defining. Whether it promotes a steamroll to take place, or if it manages to turn the game upside down on its head, it's a critical point in the early game and will determine the course for the rest of the game. So tonight, when watching the HOH play out, remember that maybe it's okay if your favorite player doesn't win the comp, because for whatever poor soul that does happen to win it, well, they might as well punch their plane ticket back to home because they're likely not going to be around the house much longer.
You've all been briefed on what to do? Great.
Thank you for watching. As always, I need to give that extra special shout out to my YouTube members who are the only people on this earth that I would feel confident about winning the second HOH, as they could be the ones to break the curse. And as always, here's a clip for you on your way out.
I'm so sorry. It is Kaser. My mistake. Sorry, Nokomis. Kaser, you are the new head of household.
Kaser! Oh! You okay? All right, try Nokomis. Yeah!